Welcome to Can We All Agree? The show that shines a light on points of unity we may not realize we have, but probably should focus on amid all the divisive distractions. Today, I hope we can all agree that each person who wants to and can legally vote in the US elections should have the access and ability to do so, and each vote should count. I also hope to agree that we have major problems with the election process now, and we're all going to have to work locally and consistently to solve them. Some of the problems that interfere with our elections representations of the majority of people's will are gerrymandering, the two-party system, vote counting, and the blocking of demographics. Now, that's a lot to unpack, so we're not gonna. Just want to touch on each of them so you know what to identify to your local election officials to make sure that you get the accountability you deserve in our voting process. I'm going to share some links in the About section below that will have excellent resources going into detail about each of these, so you can dive deeper into whatever you think matters most. I want to start with the gerrymandering, which is kind of like a magic trick that maps the masses into districts that erase the majority's impact on elections. So if you have a population of about 60% blue voters and 40% red, you should be able to district them in a way that shows that ratio of 3 blue districts to 2 red districts. This is fair and accurate. Or we can unfairly represent it to erase the red voice entirely, or create these crazy shapes that completely flip the majority into the minority, representing the opposite of the people's will in an area. Thomas Hofeller died in 2018, and when he did, his daughter discovered boxes of these maps that he had influenced all over the United States. And he advertised this service to politicians that instead of the voters choosing them, they could choose the voters and ensure they won whether the people they're supposed to represent like them or not. What's super significant about gerrymandering in this election is that we just completed the census. So the state senators who are representing us now are going to decide how to draw those lines in the future. So you want to make sure that you choose state senators that will reflect your population honestly and accurately. Another factor eliminating our choices is the two-party system, which traps us in the continuous cycle of accepting the lesser of two evils, which yields a continuous decline in the quality of candidates, which has led us to the 2 front runners today. I hope we can all agree that they're not the best representatives of the Republican or Democrat Party. And I'm sure we all agree that the first presidential debate was something we all wished we could have missed. Part of the reason we have such low quality is because they control who gets to participate in the debates, and winner take all voting makes us afraid to explore other options. So Commission on Presidential Debates is a private corporation funded by other corporations, run by the Republicans and Democrats to keep other voices out and to control what they will and won't talk about during the debates. In the past, League of Women Voters managed the debates and kept them honest, and Jimmy Carter even fought against them, including a third-party candidate. But they followed the Constitution's guideline for funding, where if a third party gets over 5% of the public vote and is on enough ballots in enough states to possibly win the Electoral College, they get millions of dollars of campaign funding from the federal government. Now, the League of Women Voters stuck with that because the majority of American voters wanted to hear other voices at our debates. Although people argued that it would be a circus if anybody could participate, only 7 candidates in history qualified by those parameters. However, in 2000, after the COPD had taken control of the debates, Anheuser-Busch decided that a third-party candidate can only participate in debates if they get over 15% of the public vote. So a beer company got to decide who we do and don't get to hear debate in our presidential elections. I hope we can all agree that's kind of messed up. Fortunately, you can find an organization at opendebates.org that's constantly challenging the COPD, trying to make the format more fair and less disgusting than what we just recently saw. and trying to open it up to third-party voices. So please take a look at them. Now, of course, the winner-take-all voting system itself makes it hard to choose a third party, especially when we get accused of spoiling elections and allowing for our greatest nemesis to end up winning. We could change this all around with ranked choice voting. You can put who your first selection is, second selection, et cetera, et cetera. And first we look at all the first preference votes. And let's say that my candidate is candidate D. He's the one that best represents me. I can vote for him. I can vote my conscience. And because he got 7.32% of the popular vote, our party can get campaign funding and maybe appear on more state ballots. Now, he loses, of course. He's, too good a guy. But after he loses, my second choice gets factored in. And then look, now candidate A has a clear majority. And I can feel like my voice was heard without me helping terrible old candidate B win the election. Now, the good news is in these orange states, ranked choice voting is already being implemented on the county or state level. And in the blue states, it's been adopted but not yet implemented. The really exciting state for me is Maine, which just won a court case last month to be able to do ranked choice voting in the presidential election. So that's one state down, 49 to go before we can actually have real choice in these elections. The Committee on Ranked Choice Voting also mentions that the candidates who are opposed by a majority of voters can never win ranked choice voting elections. I think that's fair. You might think, well, then why not just get rid of the electoral college? Why not just go with a popular vote? There's good news on that front as well. You can see on this map the amount of electoral college vote each state contributes. This map shows how many campaign events are held in which states. You can see some states aren't visited at all. Some of the very big ones, only once. The ones that get the most attention are the swing states that can turn either way, red or blue. So in the system that we have now, your vote doesn't count unless you live in a swing state. Now, the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is an agreement between 15 states so far and the District of Columbia that encompass 196 electoral votes. It's also passed in one of the two chambers in 9 states, which could yield another 88 electoral votes. We need 74 more for it to go into effect. Many state legislatures from both parties have endorsed it in all 50 states. What's interesting about this compact is that it's a state-based approach that preserves the Electoral College, state control of elections, and the power of the states to control how the president is elected, while still honoring the popular vote. All of the Electoral College members of these states agree to cast their vote for whoever wins the national popular vote. This way, each person's vote in each state will count as it should. When it comes to counting votes, other obstacles we encounter are the kinds of machines that are used and the rules of different states on voting by mail. First, many of the machines could be easily hacked in under 2 minutes with no tools at all, and Russian hackers exploited this to get administrative access and be able to look at voter registration information. Then, some of the machines are known as direct recording electronic voting machines, which means you touch a screen and your vote gets collected and there's no record of what was collected in terms of your vote. So you can't double check it and you can't ensure that it was accepted at all. Luckily, many states are trying to switch over to paper-backed electronic voting, and you have the power to talk to your local officials to make sure that the voting systems they're using seem accountable to you. You can also ask if they do any risk limiting audits to check to make sure that the counts that they're getting seem accurate. In voting by mail, there are problems with postmarks not using the correct envelope and signatures not matching in each state. So it's hard to know what has been accepted on your behalf. This has been exploited in some ways to block out certain demographics, which is an act that's unfortunately happened throughout American history. One of the tools that's used is removing of polling locations. So people who want to vote in communities that might have always had a history of voting one way is to make it so that they have to stand in lines for 8 hours to be able to vote on days that they probably also have to work. Then a lot of signatures were returned for mismatches. If you were Black or Hispanic, you have a 300% higher chance of your ballot being thrown out. Right now, there are 163 election-related lawsuits filed in 41 states and DC regarding coronavirus alone, in which the states are trying to enable voters to participate without fear of getting COVID via early voting and mail-in voting. There's a lot of money and effort going into blocking people from their constitutional right to represent themselves via their vote. Who's funding these lawsuits, you might ask? Johnson & Johnson and Charles Schwab are among them. You might want to ask them why they feel it's necessary to suppress voters' voices, especially during a time of pandemic. There's a lot of misinformation and intimidation used to block out certain groups. For example, recently, Black people were contacted and incorrectly told that if they mailed in their ballots, they could open themselves up to arrests and debt collection. We've even heard of mail processing machines being removed. It's really important that we each find out right now, or probably yesterday for some states, if everything we need to do is good to go for this election. There's lots of awesome websites. I like Stephen Colbert's Better Know a Ballot because he gives a quick video describing the counties in different states and gives you the access to check your status. Now, according to the National Vote at Home Institute, 46 states and DC now have online portals that allow voters to track the status of their ballots every step of the way. I checked mine, and I live in the state of California. So first I want you to see it's going to look different in each state. I need to have a California state ID number, and I have to have my social security number and date of birth. So I think that would be pretty hard to falsify for mail-in ballots. Now, just 4 states don't have a ballot tracking system at the state or county level. If you're in one of those states and have concerns about the status of your ballot, you can contact your local election office and then ask them why that isn't there and try to get it for your next election. What I like in California is I could also check my voting history. So I was able to check in each different election, was my ballot accepted? And I was able to confirm that every ballot I cast was indeed accepted. Have you been able to do that in your state? If not, you should demand it. I'm sure you've already seen it everywhere, but we're desperate for poll workers so you can get trained, get paid, and get intimately involved in the process and see all the inside outs. I also got to meet a cool organization called the Democracy Reform Ranking Project, which is all about growing grassroots participation in voting and election reform. So they give you the tools you need to get active in your local community. First, there's a survey where you can show what you think needs to be prioritized in election reform and events to discuss the process and get local activists engaged in the network. They have a checklist for this election of what you can still do to have the most impact, and an election guardian project where you get to know your local election officials, make sure that all the information available is accurate. This way, they also know that we, the people, are watching them. This brings me to my final point. Like I said, few people are ecstatic about the candidates running to represent them in this election. And as Plato said, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. So he believes that we deserve the predicament that we're in now. And I believe we can get ourselves out of it. Now, I'm not the kind of person who usually makes a big deal about my birthday. I kind of just like quietly scuffle along because I don't like all the attention. But this year, everybody's making a big deal about my birthday because it's November 3rd. I'm going to ask you all to please give me the best gift possible for my birthday this year. I'm asking you to be our Samwise Gamgee. Now, you might not be familiar with the Lord of the Rings story, but you're probably familiar with the expression that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's our responsibility to watch the people in power and watch the transfer of power to make sure that it doesn't corrupt the people involved and that the system itself doesn't get as corrupted as it's become. Plan buddy ballot chats with some of your friends that are local. Talk about what's in your local ballot, everything, especially the down ballot items. Our local politicians are the ones who choose if our state gets gerrymandered to smithereens, choose if we participate in the Electoral College's National Popular Vote Compact. They choose if your state gives you the option to rank choice voting or not. They have a lot of control over the system that produces the presidential candidates that we have today. So please put the pressure where it counts. Please keep a close eye on our elected officials because we have to protect them from being corrupted by power, even the best ones. Inform yourselves. There's a great website called Ballotopedia where you can see how politicians have voted on issues in the past. And at opensecrets.org, you can check what kind of money they've accepted. And it's really important to focus on the PAC money that's accepted over the individual. We'll look at that another day. I hope we all can agree that we're going to be the ones that have to do the work to make our government better represent us. So please make sure that we give this the attention that it deserves all the way down ballot. For my birthday, thank you.